They didn't have heaters humming in the background or lights chasing away the dark. There were no emergency services to call, no second chances if something went wrong. One mistake in the cold could mean the end, and yet they walked into winters so brutal that the air itself could hurt you, and they came out alive every single year. Today, people with full access to technology, stocked homes, and endless information often fall apart when the power goes out for a short time. Panic sets in, fear spreads, plans collapse. The question is not why the cold was harsher back then. The real question is why the people were stronger without trying to be. The truth is uncomfortable. They didn't survive because they prepared better. They survived because they lived differently. Their lives were built so that hardship was expected, not feared. And that single difference explains why they endured winters that would overwhelm most modern people today. They removed dependence long before winter began. Survival did not begin when the temperature suddenly dropped or when snow covered the land. It began quietly, long before winter arrived, in the way daily life was shaped and simplified. People looked closely at everything they depended on and asked a simple question: can this still work when nothing else works? If something needed constant fuel, constant attention, or help from outside, it was seen as a danger rather than comfort. Life was slowly adjusted so it could continue, even if help never came. They did not wait for winter to test their systems. They tested them in advance by living with less and depending on fewer things. If a habit only worked when the weather was kind, it was changed. If a tool failed in darkness or extreme cold, it was repaired, improved, or replaced with something simpler. Homes, food, clothing, and daily routines were shaped so they could function even in silence, isolation, and long nights. In contrast, many people today collect supplies but keep the same fragile way of living. Electricity is assumed to always return. Fuel is expected to be available. Phones, deliveries, and outside support are quietly trusted. When these disappear, panic begins because life was never designed to stand on its own. Preparation looks strong on the surface, but underneath it depends on systems that can break without warning. The reason Scandinavians survived was not because they had more resources, but because winter revealed nothing new to them. There were no sudden surprises, no hidden weaknesses showing up at the worst moment. Everything that could fail had already been removed or simplified. When winter finally arrived, life did not collapse. It simply continued because it had already been built to survive without help. They treated energy as a limited currency, not an endless resource. They understood something very simple but very powerful. Energy is not endless. Every movement, every task, every decision used a portion of strength that could not always be replaced. Because of this, life was lived with intention. Nothing was rushed, and nothing was done without reason. Even small actions were thought through, because wasting energy in extreme cold could quietly lead to weakness, illness, or death. They moved slowly, not because they were lazy, but because speed burns strength. Walking, working, carrying, and even speaking were done with care. Tasks were planned so nothing had to be repeated. If firewood was being collected, it was gathered in one complete effort, not in many short trips. If food was being prepared, it was done in a way that saved future work. This way of living protected the body from exhaustion, long before exhaustion could be felt. Food was not only nourishment, it was stored energy. Eating was balanced, not excessive, because overeating wasted supplies and undereating weakened the body. Cold weather increases hunger, but they understood the difference between real need and emotional appetite. This control allowed them to stretch resources while keeping their strength steady through long winters. In modern times, many failures happen because energy is lost without notice. People move constantly, worry constantly, and react emotionally to stress. Panic burns energy faster than physical work. Indecision drains the mind. Anxiety weakens the body. Long before food runs out, people become tired, unfocused, and careless. That is often when mistakes happen. The Scandinavians survived because they respected their limits. They did not try to push themselves every day. They rested before exhaustion arrived. They stopped work while they were still strong. By treating energy like something valuable and limited, they protected their bodies and minds from collapse. Winter did not defeat them because they never allowed themselves to burn out before it was over. Shelter was designed to protect the mind as much as the body. Shelter was never just a roof to block the wind or walls to keep the snow out. It was a place meant to steady the mind as much as it protected the body. In extreme cold, fear and loneliness can become just as dangerous as freezing temperatures. So homes were designed to make people feel safe, contained, and calm. Everything about the space worked together to reduce stress and bring a sense of stability during long, dark months. Homes were built small and enclosed on purpose. Low ceilings helped trap warmth, but they also created a feeling of closeness and security. Large open spaces were avoided because they made it harder to stay warm and easier for the mind to feel exposed. The fire was placed at the center of the home, not only to spread heat evenly, but to give everyone a shared focus. Sitting near the fire, hearing it crackle, and watching the light move helped the mind relax and feel grounded. Light was used carefully. During long winters with little daylight, warm firelight and simple lamps created a soft, steady glow that comforted the eyes and eased the sense of endless darkness. Harsh light was unnecessary and tiring. Shadows were familiar, not frightening. This gentle lighting helped maintain a sense of normal time and rhythm, even when the sun disappeared for weeks. In modern shelters, the focus is often on size, equipment, and storage. Bigger rooms, more gear, and constant stimulation can actually increase stress. Large spaces lose heat faster and make people feel small and restless. Noise, screens, and constant alerts keep the mind on edge. When the mind becomes overwhelmed, fear grows and clear thinking disappears. Scandinavians understood that a calm mind preserves strength. A person who feels safe thinks better, moves better, and makes fewer mistakes. Their shelters created an environment where worry had less space to grow. By protecting mental stability as carefully as physical warmth, they ensured that people could endure not just the cold, but the long, quiet weight of winter without breaking. They normalized discomfort before it became dangerous. Discomfort was not treated as something to avoid at all costs. It was accepted as a normal part of life. Cold, hunger, darkness, and physical effort were familiar experiences long before winter reached its harshest point. Because of this, extreme conditions did not arrive as a shock. The body and the mind had already learned how to function without panic when comfort was limited. Daily life was not built around constant ease. People spent time outdoors in cooler weather, worked with their hands, and lived without excess warmth, even when they could have made things easier. This gentle exposure trained the body to tolerate cold and trained the mind to stay calm when conditions were not ideal. Small discomforts, faced regularly, made larger hardships feel manageable instead of overwhelming. Modern life often removes all discomfort until it suddenly appears in full force. Heating, lighting, food availability, and entertainment create a sense that comfort is guaranteed. When it disappears, the body reacts with shock and the mind reacts with fear. Judgment becomes poor, and people rush to escape discomfort rather than think through it. This reaction, not the hardship itself, often causes failure. Scandinavians did not wait until winter forced them to adapt. They adapted slowly and steadily throughout the year. Darkness did not feel frightening because it was expected. Hunger did not feel terrifying because it was understood and managed. Cold did not feel unbearable because the body had already learned its limits. By making discomfort familiar, they removed its power to control them. When winter intensified, it did not feel like a crisis. It felt like a stronger version of something they already knew how to handle. This calm acceptance allowed clear thinking, steady movement, and better decisions, which ultimately kept them alive when conditions became dangerous. Decision-making was slow, intentional, and final. They understood that rushed decisions were dangerous especially in extreme cold. Cold shortens patience, clouds thinking, and punishes mistakes quickly. Because of this, decisions were never made in a hurry. Time was taken to think, to observe, and to choose carefully before acting. Once a decision was made, it was followed through without constant doubt or second guessing. Daily life was built around routines, so that fewer decisions had to be made at all. What to eat, when to work, when to rest, and how tasks were done were already decided by tradition and experience. This removed mental strain and protected energy. When the mind is not constantly choosing, it stays clearer and calmer, even under pressure. In modern situations, people are often overwhelmed by options. Too many tools, too many plans, and too much information create confusion. In stressful conditions, this leads to hesitation and constant rethinking. Indecision wastes time, drains energy, and increases fear. A person may keep changing plans instead of committing to one, which often leads to no progress at all. Scandinavians avoided this trap by trusting proven choices. If a path was known to be safe, it was taken without debate. If staying indoors was the wiser option, it was accepted fully instead of being questioned again and again. This certainty reduced anxiety and allowed the body to conserve strength. Once a decision was made, the mind could rest. There was no endless mental noise asking what if or what else. This mental quiet was just as important as physical warmth. Clear, steady decisions allowed life to move forward even in harsh conditions. By slowing down choices and committing to them fully, they protected themselves from the hidden danger of doubt, which can be just as deadly as the cold itself. They prepared for boredom more than disaster. They knew that winter was not filled with constant danger or dramatic moments. Most of it was long, quiet, and repetitive. Days looked the same, nights felt endless, and movement was limited. The real threat was not always hunger or cold, but the slow weight of boredom and restlessness that could weaken discipline and destroy morale over time. Instead of fearing this quiet, they planned for it. Hands were kept busy with simple work like repairing tools, carving wood, mending clothes, and preparing food. These tasks were not rushed. They gave structure to time and a sense of purpose to each day. When the hands were occupied, the mind stayed steady. This prevented thoughts from drifting into fear, worry, or hopelessness. Stories were shared, not just for entertainment, but to connect people emotionally and pass time in a meaningful way. Routine gatherings, shared meals, and familiar rhythms helped mark the passing of days when sunlight could not. This made time feel manageable rather than endless. Winter became something to live through, not something to escape. Modern survival thinking often focuses on moments of crisis, imagining danger as sudden and intense. But most breakdowns happen when nothing happens for too long. Silence, isolation, and lack of stimulation cause impatience, poor decisions, and emotional collapse. People begin to act just to feel something, and those actions often create unnecessary risk. Scandinavians survived because they respected boredom as a serious challenge. They understood that a disciplined mind needs structure, even when life slows down. By preparing for long stretches of stillness, they protected themselves from mental exhaustion. This quiet strength allowed them to endure winter not just physically, but mentally, until the season finally passed. Skill was more reliable than supplies. They trusted their abilities more than the objects they owned. Supplies could be lost, damaged, or used up, but skill stayed with them at all times. Fire could be made in more than one way. Tools could be repaired instead of replaced. Food could be preserved, stretched, and prepared even when ingredients were limited. These abilities were not emergency knowledge. They were part of everyday life. Skills were learned slowly and practiced often. Children watched adults work, then copied them until the movements felt natural. By the time winter arrived, nothing felt new or uncertain. Hands knew what to do without panic or hesitation. This confidence reduced fear, because people trusted themselves rather than depending on things that could fail. Modern preparation often focuses on collecting equipment while neglecting practice. Many people own tools they have never used under pressure. When stress appears, Unfamiliar tools create confusion instead of safety. A broken device or missing part can suddenly turn preparation into helplessness. Scandinavians avoided this by choosing simple tools that matched their abilities. Tools were easy to understand, easy to fix, and useful in more than one way. If something broke, it was repaired with what was already available. If a tool was lost, the skill behind it remained. This balance made survival flexible instead of fragile. They were not tied to one method or one object. They adapted to conditions using knowledge and experience rather than fear. That is why they endured harsh winters. When supplies became low or conditions changed, their skills carried them forward when equipment alone would not have been enough. Survival was their baseline, not a mode they switched into. Survival was not something that suddenly began when conditions became harsh. It was already built into daily life. People did not wait for winter to change their behavior, because their behavior did not depend on comfort in the first place. Life was shaped with the understanding that difficulty was normal and uncertainty was expected. There was no mental shift into a special survival mindset. Routines stayed mostly the same even as conditions worsened. Work continued at a steady pace. Rest was taken seriously, and resources were used carefully. Because these habits were already in place, extreme cold did not cause chaos or panic. Nothing felt unfamiliar enough to trigger fear. In modern life, many people live in a constant state of ease and only try to adapt when something goes wrong. They attempt to switch into survival mode during emergencies, but under stress, people fall back on their everyday habits, not their plans. When daily life is built on convenience, those habits collapse quickly when comfort disappears. Scandinavians avoided this problem by living in a way that already respected limits. They did not rely on constant warmth, instant food, or outside help. Their expectations were realistic, and their pace of life matched the environment. Because of this, winter did not force a dramatic change. It simply required patience and endurance. By making survival the baseline, rather than an emergency response, they removed the shock that breaks people mentally. Their calm was not bravery. It was familiarity. And that familiarity allowed them to endure long winters without falling apart when conditions became difficult.